are looking at Solomon's life. Now, before we begin, Randy Frazee had shared some wisdom that is found in Proverbs 16:18. I think we need to hold in our minds this day. There it says, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." A couple weeks ago, I've been sharing about some of my experiences in high school. I'm going to go back just a little bit further to my junior high days. I had the opportunity one time to go on a almost 2-week vacation with my parents out to California. My dad had been asked to go out and work in one of the factories out there that he was working with, and so while he went, Mom and I were invited to go along. When he was working during the day, Mom and I would go out and do the different tours. We went to Universal Studios, we went to the San Diego Zoo, we went to Tijuana, Mexico, and we went to numerous other attractions. One day, we took the tour of Beverly Hills. You know, swimming pools, movie stars. We were intrigued at seeing all those swanky homes and perhaps getting a peep at the extravagant furnishings and the landscaping that went along with them. We were pressed against the tour bus's windows, hoping to see a famous movie star that day, but we didn't catch a glimpse of one. It didn't happen until a few days later when we were at the farmer's market. I had the opportunity to stand next to Liberace as he was putting his groceries in the back of his Rolls Royce. And then I also met Alan Hale when we ate dinner at his restaurant. For those that don't remember, he was the captain on Gilligan's Island. So there I was, hobnobbing with the rich and famous. As humans, we seem to be fascinated with glamour and wealth. It seems like ever since Prince Charles married Diana, Americans have taken a keen interest in the royals of Britain. We're captivated when Prince William got engaged to Kate Middleton. Now we all know that Prince Charles stands in line to inherit the throne of England when Queen Elizabeth II passes. And then William, he will inherit it when Charles dies. We can see this royal succession in England is very orderly and very predictable. But this was not the case in ancient Israel. As our King David begins to age and become feeble, one of his sons, Adonijah, he sees an opportunity to go and take the throne, and he decides to make his move. He calls all of his friends together and he throws this huge party. And there he declares himself to be the king. The prophet Nathan, he sees what's going on and he knows that David didn't want this son to be the new king. He wanted his son Solomon to be the next king. So Nathan once again has to go and deliver bad news to King David. He tells him that Israel has a new king, and it is not Solomon. Now, even though David is feeble, he's not timid. He declares that Solomon is the true king, and he brings in a priest, and along with Nathan, they anoint Solomon. A major celebration and a feast follow with trumpets blaring and the people all shouting, "Long live King Solomon!" Adonijah could hear the roar of the crowd, and he has one of those uh-oh moments when he realizes that now that Solomon is the king, his first kingly act may be directed at me. But Solomon learns that Adonijah is hiding away in fear, and he makes a decision that will contribute to his reputation for making wise decisions. In 1 Kings 1, verse 52, his words are recorded there saying, "If he shows himself to be worthy, Not a hair on his head will fall to the ground. But if evil is found in him, he will die. When David passed the leadership role on to Solomon, Israel was in great shape. Financially, they were strong. They had no trillion-dollar debt hanging over them, and they were at peace. They had no wars going on between them and their neighbors. This was indeed a good time to be king. Early on in his reign, God approaches Solomon one night, and he asks him, "What do you want? I can give you anything that you want." Can you imagine what that would be like? Let's be honest for just one moment and imagine you could have anything that you asked for. What would you ask for? Someone over here, what would you ask for if you could get anything you wanted? A giraffe. Anybody else?
I want $1 million.
$1 million. How about back there? What would somebody back there want?
Good health.
What's that?
Good health.
Good health.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
My husband back.
A husband? Anybody over here, what else, what would you like if you could get anything you wanted?
Family unity.
And what's
Family unity.
family unity? Okay. Anybody else? How about the choir?
World peace.
World peace.
Summer all the time.
Summer all the time. Wow. Well, if you would take a poll, most people would ask for money. They would ask for large sums of money. You got it right on the nose.
You should have asked for more, though.
You should have. You should have. You could have anything. You settle for $1 million.
I don't want to get too greedy.
Well, when people do receive that money, the first thing they want to do is go out and spend it to make themselves look the part of the rich and famous. They go out and buy their fancy cars, their mansions, their yachts, maybe even a private golf course. But Solomon asked for wisdom. He wanted wisdom so he could be an effective leader of God's people. So God honors his request, and in addition to that, he gives him everything else that he didn't ask for: the wealth, the power. One of the very first things Solomon gets to do with his newfound wisdom is to settle a dispute between two women. Both of these women claim to be the mother of a baby. So Solomon calls one of his attendants to bring in a sword and to cut the child in half and give one to each of the women. One woman, she thinks this is a great idea. The other one is horrified. She rescinds her claim on this child. Solomon knew that the real mother would not allow any harm to come to the child, so he gives the baby to the rightful mother. Now Solomon, he not only wanted wisdom for himself, he wanted to share this knowledge with everybody and to give them practical ways to apply it to everyday life. So he wrote down hundreds of sayings that are collected together in the book of Proverbs. These sayings were necessary for receiving instructions offered and offered practical guidance to help everyone in God's community. Here are a couple of examples. Gossip betrays confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. Sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time they look, but they find nothing. While David was alive, he had set aside money to build a temple for God. Now it became Solomon's duty to build this temple. And not just any ordinary temple, but it was one worthy of God's presence, where people could come and worship him. According to the Bible, it took 180,000 workers 7 years to complete this magnificent temple. When it was completed, God's presence came and filled the most holy place. And there he gave Solomon further instructions of becoming a great leader. This is the same upper story that God has been telling his people from the beginning. If you follow what I say, and you make me Lord of everything in your life, I will come and live among you forever. Solomon begins to see that God delivers on his promises, and things could not be better for Israel or for Solomon at this time. This lavish temple, the prosperity of Israel, they attracted world attention. People came from all over the world to witness the beauty and the nature of this special nation, including the Queen of Sheba. She had heard about the great wealth of Israel, and she had to go and see it for herself to find out if they were as rich as everybody claimed they were, and if their ruler, Solomon, was as wise as everybody said. When she comes, she brings this caravan of camels that are carrying gifts for Solomon. During her daily tour, she discovers that the nation is even more prosperous than she had been told. Before returning home, she says to Solomon, "Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel." What Sheba saw on her visit is a reflection of the God that Israel served. Now, with celebrities like Sheba putting out tweets and Facebook posts on what they experienced in Israel, dignitaries from all over began coming to seek Solomon's advice. They are bringing gifts of gold, silver, spices, and horses. He had a fleet of ships that would go and sail the world and return every 3 years laden down with riches. The Bible says that Solomon accumulated over 25 tons of gold alone. In today's economy, that's roughly $1,607,500,000. This, added to his other treasures, made him the wealthiest and wisest king on earth. Now, Solomon seemed to be that perfect king. We know that, though, what is coming. Solomon had wrote it himself in Proverbs 16:8. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. In the course of any life, things can't seem to go smoothly for very long before conflict raises its ugly head. Toward the ends of Solomon's reign, he finds himself facing rebellion from within and attacks from outsiders. These changes didn't occur overnight, though. Rather, it was a succession of events that came together like dominoes toppling. This wise, humble, unfathomably rich king tumbled off of his throne, and he found himself running for his life. Before we get to that part of the story, though, let me ask, how many here have heard about the phenomenon of putting a frog in a pot of boiling water? Anybody? Got a couple here. Okay. For those that haven't heard about it, if you try to put a frog into a pot of boiling water, what do? They'll try to jump out. Much like us touching scalding water or a hot stove. We immediately pull our hand away. Frogs react the same way. Now, if you put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water, he'll sit there as happy and as content as can be. Now, as you gradually heat the water, the frog will hardly even notice what's going on and till that warm bath suddenly becomes a boiling cooker and it's too late. This is what happened to Solomon. His kingdom was filled with the most exquisite and expensive stuff. On top of this, he ended up having a lot of wives. A lot of wives. 700 to be exact.
That's what we're wondering.
Yep. Along with, on top of those 700 wives, he also had 300 concubines. While this wasn't necessarily wrong, Solomon disobeyed one of God's rules, and he took wives from other nations. God had warned the Israelites not to take wives from other nations because they could lead them to worship foreign gods. Solomon may have thought that he was too wise to allow his wives to lead him astray. We've all been here. He was right at first. We don't know if his fall began after his 20th year or into his 30th year of reign, but eventually that water got too hot. The Bible says that as Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after their own gods. In all my years, I've never met a person who purposely jumped in to a pot of boiling water. Nobody wakes up one morning and says, you know what? I think today is the day that I'm going to ruin my relationship by going off and having an affair. Nobody jumps up in the morning and says, you know, nothing's really on my agenda. I think today I'm going to embezzle from the company. Or, you know what? I think today is the day I'm going to become an alcoholic. But sadly, things like that happen every day. And those who do those things will tell you the exact same thing. The water didn't seem so hot at first. In our lower story lives, it can appear like everyone else is out having fun. Everyone else can do whatever they want, while I'm stuck here with all these rules from God that keep me from having any fun. Solomon probably thought that those neighboring country girls, they looked pretty exotic and they were beautiful and he deserved to enjoy himself. But he had enough willpower not to fall for their gods. We know that in God's upper story, it never changes. And it's not influenced by what we want. Ultimately, God is building that perfect community in which people treat each other with respect and honor Him as the one true God. So what about you? Do you find yourself tempted every now and then to jump into the lukewarm water? Remember, what feels warm and soothing today may well turn into the cauldron that cooks the goose. How we live our lives matters. We need to pray that we not only start out strong, but we finish strong. Solomon's best advice for us to be extremely careful about jumping into harmless pots of water. Even if we have at some point entered into that water and we're already fully cooked, we need to remember that God, He says it's never too late to turn to Him. It's never too late to get out of that pot, even if we find ourselves overdone and wrinkled. True wisdom leads us to depend on God and humbly trust that He truly knows what is best for us. Amen.